Press. Good afternoon and welcome to Metro Home Theater Tech Tips. I'm Brent McCall and with me is
Adam Rogers.
And today we have a little bit of a special show. We have a panel show today with the gentleman from JVC and Screen Innovations. Adam, take it away.
Sure. So I'm going to switch over here real quick. We're going to get everybody on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and do this here. And what you should see now is our guest that we have with us. We have Chris Deutsch in the top left-hand corner from JVC. We have Jason Russell in the bottom left-hand corner, and we have Russell Warnoff in the bottom right corner. And I'm going to get the audio from them up. Gentlemen, how are we today?
Doing well.
Good.
Awesome.
So
yeah.
Just to make sure that everybody can hear us, if you are on the YouTube channel, give us a hi. You are in the comment section, of course. Leave your comments, leave your questions. That way, as we're doing our discussion, if a good question comes across or a good comment comes across, we'll go ahead and bring it up and talk about it. So definitely put that down in the comments so we can talk about that as well. So without further ado, we're just going to kind of jump in and talk about the premise of what we've got going on today. Brent?
Yeah, a lot of what you're going to see is things that Chris and the gentlemen from Screen Innovations and I do when we do a distributor show. We spend a lot of time talking with each other and with the dealers on how to put a system together, how to make a room work, how to select the screen material, projectors. All this stuff comes together, and honestly, we spend a lot of time after the show is over sharing ideas on how to make this stuff better for the dealers. That's right. How this is going to go. It's a very informal panel for the group of us, and we really want your input to know what you want to know.
That's right. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and just kind of dive right in. What are the first topics that we have to talk about? And again, thank you to Chris for putting this kind of discussion together. Really, we're going to kind of talk about just the general design of a home theater. You know, what kind of spaces are we working with? Are we working with more of a dedicated home theater system? Are we working with a more multi-purpose, a media room, a multi-purpose setup?
A bedroom?
A bedroom. Even down here in Florida, what we have to deal with, of course, is the big sliding glass doors with the sun blaring in through the side of the room. And it becomes very difficult in situations like that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of turn it over to the panel. You know, when you're designing a space, what's some of the first things that you all, take into account when you're designing it?
I'm going to toss this one actually to Russell Warnoff first, because the room really determines the screen material, in my opinion. Russell?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Picking the the right screen and the right projector all depends on the type of environment you're in. And all those environments change. I mean, right now I'm in my office. I've got, plenty of light coming in through the windows. I've got my ceiling cans above. All that can affect your image quality and your overall experience and how you watch your content. So really starting with the room and that's really your starting point. And we've got a really good tool that we'll bring up and we'll show here momentarily, but there's a really good analogy we like to use. I don't know, is it too soon, guys, to talk about that, or
throw your analogy out, Russell?
Go for it.
Jason, you're much better at this than I am, so I'll throw it over to you.
Okay, so basically, like Russell was saying, you start with your room, and so we think about this as a race car analogy, and so we call this the race car analogy. So if I've got two different cars, let's say I've got a Porsche 911 Turbo, and then I've got a 2012 F250, and we're going to go on a race. If we generally ask the question, who's going to win the race, most people would say, oh, the Porsche is going to win. And the problem is we picked the race car without actually knowing where we're going to be doing the race at. Where's our race track? And so if I said, yeah, we're going to go down to Circuit of the Americas outside of Austin, Texas, the Porsche is going to win all day, every day, no matter what, around that track, because the truck just isn't built for that. However, if we said, we're going to race to COTA, Circuit of the Americas, but you can't take a paved road to get there, that 4x4 F250 starts to look really good, and that's probably going to win the race, right? And so when we think about that, you've got your racetrack. You have to know where you're going to go to your race, and in order to do that, that's where the screen comes into play. If you take a step back, Projection screens were never meant to be out of the dark. You go to a movie theater, it's dark. You look back at projection technology over the decades, it's all been built around darker rooms. Well, we started off and said, where do people put projection? Are they putting it in their theater rooms, dedicated theater rooms? What is a dedicated theater room versus a media room or a mix? Look at where the room is at in order to decide what kind of screen technology that you're going to put into it to combat the room. Because if you don't have a truly dark, dedicated movie theater-like room, then you can use screen technology, ambient light rejection technology in order to combat the environment and get the best picture quality. And then you can move on to your projector and really pick your best driver, right? So you've got your room, that's your racetrack, you've got your screen, that's your car, and then you go out and you hire the best race car driver you can for performance and everything like that, and they do a ton of work. But you can take one of JVC's best projectors, and if you throw it into a really, really bright room, I'm talking, a commercial space that with tons of ambient light, you don't get to pick up on all the detail and all the work that a company like JVC has put into their projectors. And so it's a balance of finding the right room, screen, and projector together, along with your accessories and components, in order to get a proper picture solution that's going to look great and enjoyable for your viewers.
And if I could also add in here, so a lot of times people talk about the room, but then there's also your personal viewing habits. So I talk to a lot of folks to go, yeah, I got a dedicated theater, and I'm thinking, great. And they go, of course, we're going to be watching the football game in there, and we want some lights on. So it's the room, it's the viewing habits, all of that comes into play. And a lot of that's going to affect the screen that you choose, and to some degree, which JVC projector, because we've got the DILA projectors that are optimized for the dark room dedicated theater, and then we also have the higher lumen DLP projectors, which could be the better choice for I want to put this out into the multimedia family room, something where I've got some brighter lights.
And I've gone down every one of those paths. I started with living room multimedia with DLP, switched to a semi-dedicated room LCD, and now I'm doing the DILA in a dedicated room with first generation SI Black Diamond, I believe, which I got many years ago from Blake.
Yeah. So real quick, guys, I just want to jump in real quick and say, if you're watching the stream, thank you very much. Again, we are Metro Home Theater Group. We're here joined with JVC and Screen Innovations. Again, ask your questions. We have this panel set aside for you, the dealers, the installers, the distributors, whoever is watching this, to ask your questions to us. We're going to be talking about things today about, again, general design. We're going to go into some other details about different brightness calculations and some other stuff as well. But along the way, ask your questions, put your comments in there. And in fact, we worked it out with JVC as well as with Screen Innovations. We're going to be giving away a nice little swag bag of some kind, of just a bunch of extra stuff that we have for some free giveaways. That way, so the best comment, the best question that we have available inside of the live chat, we'll have an opportunity to win that as well. So with that, when
I have a question.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about screen gain, because that's when I started this years ago, you had to have a high gain screen because the projectors had horrible outputs. Now, obviously, that's improved through the years. So where do you guys stand on recommended screen gain in a typical darkened, light-controlled environment?
So
Jason?
I'll take that one, Russell. Yeah, sure. So, to your comment, you used to have higher gain screens to help the projector with the light output. We have the brightness out of the projectors now. You don't necessarily need a high gain screen in order to get that pop you're looking for to really enhance the brightness overall. So let's talk about the room for a second. If you notice the room that Chris's background was, that was more of your traditional dedicated dark room. And when I say dark room, I mean a room that has the walls are either treated, there's no windows, you can control the light, it's non-reflective, meaning the room maybe it's not black, right? It's not painted like a man cave per se, but it is a darker, non-reflective kind of colors on the wall, the carpet, everything like that. Our Unity 1.0 gain materials, our reference white material, that's the type of material that we send over to JVC when they go in and do their testing in a completely dark room, a blacked out room for a test environment. that's a 1.0 gain neutral. Anything below 1 is considered a negative gain. Anything above 1 is considered a positive gain. And so we send over a 1.0 gain matte white, very uniform, very color accurate reference white material that they would want to use their testing, really, tune the projector, make sure you maximize performance of what the projector's doing. If you've got the room and the environment for it, now you've got your awesome work that the projector manufacturers have put into it. You take advantage of that.
Now, does the standard white screen offer better off-axis viewing than your traditional gray or color enhancing screens?
Yeah, so there's an interesting thing about that people think that contrast is increased. You get a greater range of contrast with a gray screen. It's actually incorrect that a gray screen with no optical layer technology, I'm just talking about a material that is more gray in nature, the contrast shifts down. So let's say you take a pure gray from SI, which is a 0.85 gray, 0.85 gain gray screen. That's going to make a little bit darker black, but at what cost? It's going to absorb about 15% of the brightness, the whites as well. So I didn't really expand my contrast ratio, black versus white. I shifted it closer to black. And
okay, so you just you just rolled the EQ off the high frequency and boosted the bass.
You got it. Yeah. Right. And so that's not going to give you increased contrast, more shades of gray, more black shadow detail, everything like that. So in order to do that,
keep going.
You can do things like light rejection, and those optical layers are that reject the ambient light or redirect the light away from the viewer. So if you have a side window like I do in my media room, it blocks some of that light. Now you can put in shades, you can put in curtains, you can put in drapery and so on. But if you have to put your room where it has ambient light, you want to use an ambient light rejection technology that mitigates that minimizes that environment. Now, what's the trade-off? The trade-off could be some of that viewing angle, because you have to think, if we're not accepting light from those side directions, we're also not reflecting light back that direction. So if you have a really wide seating angle, you generally don't recommend a high ambient light rejecting screen, because you don't want to block the seating off to the really wide. Now, not to scare anyone away, you're still generally a pretty wide angle, about 70, 80 degrees. And
okay.
So from the center of the screen, you'll be come down. It's still.
Okay, so next question to follow up on that, with HDR, which is the whole new world for screens and projectors, but particularly screen technology, is the white a better choice then because of the wider availability for the brightness for the HDR?
That's a great question, and I found it interesting. We've played a lot with it. The challenge with any white screen, especially any non-ALR, all white screens are non-ALR, non-ambient light rejection, is that any reflection off the walls are going to create some challenges. Now, if you've got that perfect black room,
right,
a white screen will look great. But what I've found is in most rooms, to Chris's point, you don't sit in the dark room with your buddies to watch the football game or anything like that. So even if you're watching a movie and you have friends over, like an ambient light rejection screen like Slate or Black Diamond, having some of that with a positive gain, such as a 1.2 or 1.4, allows you to get that brightness out of it. But because of ALR and really with the black levels that the projectors are producing these days, you're able to have good separation.
Okay,
HDR is never going to be the same as on a television. It's just the nature.
Well, you're shooting a light beam through something, so blacks are never going to be as lush as they are on LCOS technology. It's still not on even LCDs, not CRT.
Right, gentlemen, I'm noticing some questions coming in relating to this.
Awesome.
And there was a question about foot lamberts, and I don't know how you guys would respond, but basically my general rule of thumb is with HDR, you're looking for around 30 foot lamberts of brightness. With a really large screen, you can sometimes get away with a little less. And for the longest period of time, with standard dynamic range, with high definition content, that target has always been 14 or 16. And I don't really find that the screen material changes that. But the screen material does allow you to get a proper, nice contrasty image with a good range of black to white, regardless you know, as long as you pick the right material for the room that you're in, but it's not going to change.
Yeah, but I can't get on there
foot
because the
Lambert
screen's up, so I have to
recommendation,
switch it over to
either
Brent.
30 for
hold on a
HDR,
hold
or
on a
14
second.
to 16 for
Hold,
SDR.
hold on a second, Chris. Adam had to step off site and he's running
No,
his
it's gonna be on this one.
microphone
Which
while
one is
he's
it?
off site. So continue on. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just going to say either Jason or Russell. Do you guys agree?
I didn't think it would do that.
With the contract with the HDR.
guess so.
The type of screen material doesn't really change that underlying recommendation of brightness.
To some degree, yeah. I mean, we have a really cool tool on our website that we can pull up here for you.
Oh
in
yeah,
a
Jason
few
was
minutes.
telling me about that. Can you show us that, Jason?
Yeah, let's pull that up because this actually will show you. You brought up a couple good terminology too, and there might be some people that are watching us right now that don't know what foot Lamberts means or foot candles. Just kind of an explanation, real quick, of what I feel are three very important measurements of light regarding like projection systems. First one that I mentioned, we have foot Lamberts. That's the measurement of reflected brightness off of the screen that we're shooting on. The next
Jason, for
unit
what
of
it's
measurement-
worth, we cannot turn off the upper right-hand corner screen on YouTube if you would drag your window over to the left-hand side.
Give me 1 second. I'm running dual monitors. Let me click something.
Don't you love live?
Yeah. I'm seeing the screen just fine, but did we lose the video or something?
No, I'm seeing you. I'm seeing me in the upper right-hand corner. I may not be. That's just on the monitor I'm looking at. So go ahead and go back to it.
Yeah, go back and share because it was showing up fine for me, but
Okay.
And Chris, maybe.
Yeah, Brent's window just stays live.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm seeing right now on the playback.
How's that?
Just keep in mind your upper right corner's not really visible.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
So real quick, just to finish up, and then Jason will dive in and show you what that means. But so we have lumen output, which is the next unit of measurement, and Chris can kind of chime in on lumens. That's the measurement of brightness out of the projector itself. And then lastly, we've got what we call foot candles, which is your measurement of light within the space. So when we use all three of those different types of measurements, we can really get down and pick the right material, the right projector for that application. So,
How many different materials do you sell?
Oh gosh, I probably. What do you think, Jason? 15?
That's a good question. So here are a list of all the materials. There's about 20. And now some of those include various gains of different materials. Say in the black diamond, we have 3 different gains for the black diamond option. Same with slate. But then also you throw in things like acoustically transparent. So where we take a slate 1-2 material and then we perforate it, or a slate 8 material and we perforate it. So there's several, about 20 different variations within that, about 8 primaries.
I am going to ask Chris a question on the acoustically transparent material. In the old days, we were always afraid of that because the projectors really didn't have the power. Are acoustically transparent screens now a better choice than they used to be? Are the projectors powerful enough to overcome that loss?
I can answer it from a perspective of the picture, and I'll pass it on to SI regarding the sound. Usually, when you step back, my experience has been I can see the perforations or the weave when I'm 2-3 feet back, but when I'm at a normal viewing distance, I don't see them. And I can tell you, I've been in a variety of demo theaters. Even very recently, I was at a retailer in the Denver area that had an SI slate perf screen. It looked awesome, and I thought it sounded great. Russell or Jason, can you add anything to that?
Yeah, so I actually have one of our Slate 1.2 perforated screens at home. And what I found is, once you get to, obviously, to Chris's point, if you're closer, you're absolutely going to see that whole pattern. But once you get to about the 11, 12, even 13 foot mark, it kind of fades away. You don't really see it. You're focusing on the image, and you really don't notice the holes. I often get the question that, well, what if I go with a larger screen? And that doesn't necessarily matter because the hole diameter doesn't change on the perforated screens. So you're totally okay there. The other option is the woven fabric. Now, acoustically, the woven fabric will edge out. So if you absolutely have that audiophile grade, if you're looking for that very high-end acoustics, that's where the woven Maestro fabric comes in. If you are a little bit, but you can't do things like ambient light rejection. So if you need some more visuals or you want some positive gain, something like that, that's where things like the Slate 1.2 come into play on that.
Cool.
Okay.
So what's this wonderful app we got on the screen here?
Okay, so if you go to screeninnovations.com and over here in what they call the hamburger menu, and you come down here, you'll see Screen Material Wizard.
Is there a French fry
Guys,
menu?
that's what no one can see that right now.
Okay, it's in the top right. So
Yeah.
So you'll see our Screen Material Wizard. There's a little link that talks about how does it work. I'll take care of walking you through that. So you'll select your screen size, your aspect ratio, stuff like that. So I've already pre-selected a 120-inch diagonal, a 16:9 aspect ratio. In this case, I'm going to leave it a dark room, so only 1 foot candle of light in the room. So this is essentially dark. And then if we just pick an average 1500 lumen projector, what this tells you, the way it's designed, anything that's in green meets a minimum contrast ratio that is acceptable, and you're going to get a great contrasty image out of it. And you can see in a dark room, all of the materials are green. Now, one of the other things I really like about this tool is it will show you the foot Lamberts. If we put 1500 lumens on a 120-inch 16:9 image with a 1.4 gain, you can see we get a bright 49 foot Lambert image. Wow. If we go down to that negative gain, you can still see it's bright enough. It's going to help our black levels because it's negative gain, so we're shifting it down, but you're still reaching a 28 foot Lambert. Now, to Chris's point, is this great for HDR? It's at the bubble, right? We probably want to bump up if we're watching a lot of the HDR content. And you can see that foot Lambert here. It also lists the nit rating here, contrast ratio, and so on. Let's introduce some light into the room. And there's a couple of apps you can download from iPhone and Android. You can download, or you can use a camera, a photography light meter to figure out the foot candles. You hold it in front of your screen and measure how much foot candles are hitting it. So let's say you've got some sconces, or you've got a window, or you've got some overhead lights that you want to introduce into the room. You want to have that ambient light so you're not sitting in the dark. You know, an average kind of dim room, we might find ourselves somewhere in that 4 or 5 range. You'll notice that because we've started to introduce ambient light, our contrast ratio drops. We still maintain the brightness overall, but the contrast is what suffers. Ambient light destroys contrast. And so that's why the ALR screens hold their own. Now, how do we combat this? So Chris was talking about some brighter projectors, such as their DLP models. If we increase the brightness on the projector, Chris, I don't remember offhand how many lumens, but is
like the little DLP lasers 3000.
Okay, great. So in that same environment, the only thing I changed was the brightness of the projector. Now more materials work, and I get increased contrast because I've got the separation between white and black. As I add light into the room, I need to continue adding in lumens if possible in order to maintain contrast.
Okay. Well, that seems fairly straightforward. So you just enter the data and it tells you which ones are good, and call your sales guy and find the one that's right for your customer.
Place the order, spend some money, and you're good to go.
Good to go.
This is right on our website too. You don't have to log in or anything. This is available to everyone that wants to use it. So,
awesome.
So this is great. One of the things that I always am a proponent for is an educated customer. I love the idea that a customer can go on there onto our website, SI's website, even JVC's website, and get information as to what's going on, and they can be educated as to what it is that they should be looking for. That's a great tool to have to, at the very least, hey, you put in your room layout, you put in your room light, for the information that you have, and it spits out the information for what you're able to use.
I do have a question for Chris, because a lot of dealers and consumers use this. Is the information on Projector Central correct for JVC projectors?
Absolutely. In fact, if it's not, it's my fault.
Okay, then.
I'm the guy that enters that for JVC.
The reason I asked that
Central.
question is because I have run across a lot of projectors where the data was not correct.
Now Projector
Not
Central
JVC.
has Projector Central has certain formulas that they use, and there's certain things about their website that work a little different than other people. But in terms of the basic underlying information that drives it, I check that. If there's something that doesn't make sense, please let me know. And Projector Central is also very good about working with us to kind of fine tune some of those formulas that lead to some of the results that you'll get with their site. But on balance, yes, it's very good. Hey, I noticed another question earlier that I thought would be worth addressing. Someone had asked about in a dedicated room whether you should go 16 by 9 or 2.35 to 1.
That's right.
Let's just maybe call that.
Well, that was my question.
I'll give my answer.
So, please.
Okay. I'll give my answer, and then again, one of the SI folks may have their opinion. I like to say that 16 by 9 or 235 ultra wide can each be very good in a dedicated room. It all comes down to what you watch the most, and it also comes down a little bit to the space you have to work with in your room.
So, Chris, when you're talking about something like choosing which one you're going with, would you, before you jump all the way into 16.9 versus 2.3, are you able to watch the 16.9 on a 2.3? I mean, again, this sounds like a simple question for us, here doing this conversation, but this is a real conversation that some dealers will have with their clients at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. You can watch any content really on any screen as long as you set it up correctly in the room. The original long time back rule of thumb is if you mostly watch TV, and TV includes HBO, on cable and stuff like that.
Sports.
Then you're going to get 16 by 9. And if you mostly watch movies, particularly on a Blu-ray player or now a 4K Blu-ray player, then you're going to watch 2.35 to 1 or ultra wide. Could be 2.35, could be 2.40. It varies a little. What I don't like to see is when someone says, well, I like to watch movies, so I'm getting an ultra wide screen, but they don't have enough space to make it big enough. And then when they do want to watch 16 by 9 content on that screen, it becomes too small and you lose all of the wow factor. Okay, so I would only do 2.35 if you have enough space that your 16 by 9 looks really good and your 2.35 looks even better. And often those larger 2.35 screens also happen to be where you want to use acoustically transparent material. Yep. Now, the one other consideration is a lot of people these days are streaming, and some of the streaming services do have 2.35 to 1 or 2.40, whatever content. But there's also other in-between aspect ratios that are now coming out, like 2.0 to 1.
That's a new one on me.
You'll see services like, exactly, you'll see services like Netflix that have some of these in-between aspect ratios. So the bottom line is you want to pick the screen shape that best matches the majority of the content that you watch.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick screen change, gentlemen, to our overhead to show, for those that don't know a 16 by 9 to 2.35, what we're talking about. When you're looking at a 16 by 9 screen, it's pretty much a standard television aspect ratio. A 2.35 will be wider for the same height. So you get a more of a panoramic view. This is particularly older movies. Now, Chris is a big proponent of the Anamorphic. Is this something that is easily to attach to the JVC projectors?
And one more thing before you jump into that, what is Anamorphic? That's really one of the key points.
So there's two ways. There's two ways to do an ultra wide screen in the world of JVC projectors. And first of all, if you're thinking an ultra wide screen, then you want to be looking at one of the DILA projectors as opposed to one of the DLP projectors. The DLP projectors are best for a 16 by 9. If you have an ultra wide screen and you get a DILA, you can either zoom the image, you can zoom the image down to the height of the screen and center it, when you want to watch 16 by 9, you can zoom it out to the width of the screen and then recenter it up and down, recenter it vertically when you're watching ultra wide content. When you do it that way, you didn't really get rid of the letterbox bars, but they're now projecting above and below the screen and you don't see them. Now, Anamorphic is a company that makes lenses, and they make anamorphic lenses for projection equipment. We partner with Anamorphic to the point that we include the mounting hole that you need for that lens is on the JVC DILA projector. When you install that lens, you go to a different scaling mode in the JVC, and then that lens uses the full height of the chip and the full width of the screen. The black bars are mostly eliminated. It varies a little from title to title, and because you're using the full height of the chip and all the pixels on the chip, you get additional brightness because we're not wasting any of those pixels projecting the black bars above and below the screen.
So with kind of reversing that idea, we of course we have our Spyclops cameras, and we have one camera that's a 22 times zoom camera. It's an optical zoom, and when we zoom in, one of the things that we talk about with that camera is when we zoom in with that camera, it stays at the full resolution as you zoom all the way in. So when you're talking about using this Anamorphic lens, you're able to utilize the entirety of the chip that's inside of the projector to be able to get that ultra wide layout. Is that correct?
Yeah. Now keep in mind, even with lens memory, we're not gaining or losing any pixels when we optically zoom.
Okay.
So it's a good way to do it, but because we're projecting a larger image, it becomes dimmer. With the Anamorphic, the projector, as I said, has a scaling mode, which actually stretches the picture vertically and puts in additional pixels. And because all the pixels are now lit up, there's more brightness. You do zoom on a modern anamorphic lens, you do zoom the projector to the full width of the screen, but now you've got this image that's too tall. The lens compresses it back down into the space of that screen. So it's focusing all of that brightness onto a smaller area, and as a result, it's brighter.
Very nice.
Now, from SI standpoint,
I don't want to be hogging all the screen time. I want to let the SI guys
from
talk.
SI standpoint, how many of the sales, and I'm asking kind of a secret question, we're going to ask anyway, how many of the sales are 235 versus 16 by 9?
Yeah, so I'll say this: we live in a 16 by 9 world. I mean, most of the content that
Mine
people
is.
are. Yeah, exactly. From Netflix, video games, sports, a lot of that content is in 16 by 9. So we do sell a fair number of 16 by 9 screens compared to ultra wide screens. That's just because more people are watching that type of content more than movies even.
Now,
so these days.
a purely business question, is there a delivery time difference between a widescreen or an ultra-wide if somebody selects it, or 16 by 9?
No, that's the great part. Do you want me to take this, Jason? Okay. So all of our screens, we're a completely custom company, so we can build you a screen inch by inch that fits that space. And it's about 2 week lead time typically on all of our screens. Motorized screens run about a week longer. We're about 3 weeks right now. But for the most part, yeah, anything's possible with projection. That's what I love about projection compared to flat panels, is because with a flat panel TV, you're stuck. You go into your local retailer or local dealer, and you're looking at a lot of the flat panel displays, and it's a fixed format. You can't change that. And you also can't put it in front of your speakers. If you have a center channel speaker and you want to mount your flat panel in front of it,
Right.
Good luck hearing
Right.
that sound.
You
So,
wind up talking like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Right.
Jason?
I've got a question. So Russell, what aspect ratio is your screen?
I have a 240 screen.
Hey,
A
Chris?
240 screen. So
I have a 16 by 9.
where are you using a 240?
You have masking.
No, well, self-masking with slate, because slate's being a darker
Oh, okay.
material, does a good
Excuse me.
job of kind of self-masking for 16:9. But yeah, it's 240.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so 2.35 to 1, 2.40 to 1. Either way you look at it, either one can be ultra wide. You'll see some titles that are still in 2.40 versus 2.35 and so on. You'll also see some other movies, such as La La Land was shot in like 2.55 to 1. The Hateful Eight was shot in 2.76 to 1.
Oh,
Wow.
And I
wow.
just wanted to say, because there's different aspect ratios to invoke a feeling. That's why a cinematographer, a director, or whoever will decide to use these things. And so one quick plug for a YouTube video that I saw. There's something called it's SFX, like sound effects, SFX Secrets, the power of aspect ratios. It's a very cool video.
Well,
I
is
encourage
is that the entire title? SFX, the
Yeah.
power of that
aspect
whole
ratios.
title has to be typed in. I'm
you
doomed.
can search, it pops up, but it's a very cool, informative video on aspect ratios, and it, it might lean a customer or a dealer to suggest one aspect ratio or another based on that conversation with their customers.
What is the most
Cool.
common screen material you guys are seeing used now?
Well, that's a great question. I would say the most common material that we see now is our Slate 1.2. It's our high middle ambient light rejection material. It's more common because it's price point. It's about 2/3 the price of black diamond and 2/3 the performance. But because it's also a PVC vinyl based material with those optical layers, we can do things like motorized it. So if you've got somebody who doesn't need a fixed on wall screen, but they want a screen to drop down, you can have that screen that's there for that big screen experience, maybe roll it up for the TV, or even if you just want your room, your environment to look a certain way, then have a screen drop down. So we can do that. On the ALR side, our black diamond, just hands down, is very high performing. And so it leads consumers to be able to use it in different rooms. Unfortunately, you can't motorize it. And so because of that, that's the difference.
I do have a question for Chris. What is your most popular product right now?
It's hard to pick just one. It's actually fairly balanced. We are having a lot of success with our new 3000 lumen laser DLP, which is a $36.99 retail, and people are buying that for the performance to value proposition that it offers. Great 4K performance, great brightness, nice small size at a good price. But if you look at it, the DILA projectors, either the DLA RS 1000 and 2000 or the DLA NX5 and NX7, depending on where you buy them, those are $6,000 and $9,000 retail price points, and combined, we sell almost as many of those as we do that laser DLP. So for the people that have the dedicated theater, they're going with the DILA. For the people that have the multi-purpose room, they're going with the higher lumen DLP projector. One other thing also that's important when we talk about the whole topic here is designing the room. And so the viewing distance, in other words, where are you going to put your sofa? Where are you going to put that main row of seating in relationship to the screen? And that's one of the things that people, I think, forget when they're looking at, say, flat panel versus projection. And most experts will tell you, if you want to enjoy that 4K that you're paying for, you want to be somewhere between 1 and 1.5 times. To take the size of your screen, multiply that by 1 to 1.5, and that becomes your viewing distance. So if you got a 75-inch flat panel, you probably want to be between 5 or 6 feet and 8 or 9 feet back in terms of your viewing if you want to appreciate the 4K that you're paying for.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I don't think I've seen a lot of people that are 5 or 6 feet back from a 75-inch screen.
Right.
Now, when you've got a 120-inch SI screen and a JVC projector, and you do that same math, now you're at a much more comfortable let's call it 10 to 15 feet. Okay. And so you can be, like in my case, I'm 12 feet back on a 120-inch screen, and I'm able to see all of that 4K resolution at that much more comfortable
Take
distance.
full
My
advantage
goal
of
has
it.
always been my screen should be just at the edge of my peripheral vision, just to the inside.
Yep.
That is my
A lot
goal.
of people buy a 4K TV, and yet they sit way too far back to actually appreciate the 4K that they paid for. A projector solves that problem.
Right.
And of course, you know, we talk about the SI screen, we talk about the JVC projector, we can't forget the ethereal HDMI cable that you need to run from all your gear to the projector. So
And just as a shameless plug, what cables are in your house?
I have ethereal.
It's a shameless plug, I'll admit it.
I believe I'm using a fiber optic HDMI cable, Brent, and thank you guys for that. So
Yeah. One of our install bay cables, more than likely, or possibly our Vlogs. Do you remember which
Install
one?
bay.
Install bay.
Yes.
It's a great cable. So real quick, we've we've now been talking here for about 40 minutes, and we've got a lot of questions and a lot of really good comments. So I'd like to go ahead and jump over to those. The first, this is actually the most recent comment that we've had. This comes from Sean Hunter. He says you only need one seat right in the center.
I have two. I literally have two, and that's it. If you don't fit in one of those two, I'm sorry, you don't belong.
So, and I'll touch on this a little bit because I actually had one of my clients from before. We actually designed his theater with 5 seats. He only had 4 people in his house, but we did 5 seats because he was the one paying for it, and his seat was the one right in the middle. And so the entire room was just dedicated to that one seat. When we did any kind of the calibration, it was always dedicated for that one. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's just work with your room.
You got to keep the wife happy.
Got to keep the wife happy. So with that being said, some of the good questions that we had from earlier on, this one's a little bit more detailed and something that I don't know a lot about. And I believe this is directed toward the Screen Innovation gentleman. This is from projectorscreen.com. He's asking, how does ALR technology affect recommended foot lamberts? I.e., if we would suggest a 30 FTL in a room based on the level of ambient light on a traditional white surface when using a black diamond?
Yeah, great question. So when I was showing that tool earlier where you could bring that up, you get the math is involved. All of this is science and math, right? So you've got the brightness of the projector.
Science? Real science?
I never believed that my science instructors in high school, and here I am,
Right.
And so, but you've got your brightness out of the projector, you've got your screen size, you do the calculation, you get your foot lamberts. Let's say you have 30 foot lamberts on a white screen, you have 30 foot lamberts on an ALR screen such as Black Diamond. So they would be the same gain, same output, everything like that. The only thing that's changed is material ALR versus non. The problem is with a non-ALR screen, having a white material, what's the darkest black I can get on white from a light bulb, right? I mean, it's very difficult to do. So given if you have ambient light in the room, you're going to suffer with being able to get any kind of black level, contrast. It's going to suffer. So you're going to find that your clients are constantly turning off their lights. With the Black Diamond, you're able to have more light on because of the way the Black Diamond optical technology works. It rejects that light, so it helps neutralize the room, and I can maintain black levels. I can maintain shadow details, contrast the image, and so on. And it does this because the base material is darker, but it also optically rejects that light coming from other angles except from that direction of the projector.
So that way more of the light that you're actually viewing is coming from the picture itself that you're trying to see.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I think to answer the question, if there is more ambient light in the room, then having additional foot lamberts of brightness coming off the screen would be a benefit to kind of cut through that and to maintain, a good experience. So when we say 30 foot lamberts of brightness, that is for a pretty dark room for HDR. If you're competing with that other ambient light, yeah, you might want more.
Well, and keep in mind, it's also about content. If you're watching football or something very bright, where there's not a lot of black levels, a lot of details. Like, you know, if you're watching football versus, you know, that last episode of Game of Thrones or whatever, you're not going to see any of the image because you don't have any contrast because you're washing it out because of ambient light. Versus with a football, you know, or sports, the lights are on, it's really bright. There's very little that's in the shadows, in the dark, right? It's content driven. So think about that too as you develop your systems.
Now, on an ALR screen, the position of the additional lighting, like a ceiling lamp or a table lamp, also affects how much it gets into it, because the further off axis, the better off you are with the light, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so, like most things in the electronics world, there's no consumer electronics police that says, "Hey, you're you know, claiming 85% ambient light rejection." Well, where are you claiming that from? The reality is, the further off axis the light is. So, for example, if I was your screen and there was a window directly to my right or left, that light is going to be easier to block if that was a lamp or a window. If it's more head on, as you're sitting across from me, or perpendicular to me, I'm not going to reject any of that light because that's the light direction the projector's coming from.
Right. If the light's directly under the projector, it's hitting the screen the same as the projector.
Correct. So we hear this all the time. We hear, well, I've got a window that's opposite of the screen, but it's 70 feet away or it's 30 feet away. Light travels very fast, and the screen doesn't know the difference between the projector light and the window light or that light source. So it's therefore going to affect the projected image with contrast. There's one caveat to that. Short throw projectors, we do have some short throw ALR technology that the projector is designed to be very close to the screen, ultra short throw that can still reject some light coming from even those broader angles.
What does that do to viewing angle?
You know, it's interesting. You would think it would really destroy it. In fact, it's very wide, like 150, 160 degrees.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. So let's talk about short throw projection versus the standard throw. So when we have a setup like that, does the screen structure itself have to be different? Should you choose a short throw screen for that application?
You have a couple of options. You can do your traditional non-ALR whites, grays, and you can use those with the short throw projector. Because they're non-ambient light rejection, they don't mind which direction the projected light comes from.
Right.
However, if you take a black diamond or a slate and you have a projector that's shooting up from the bottom, those materials are designed to reject light from this angle. So you need a short throw material that's designed specifically for it, where it'll accept the light and then bounce it back to the viewer.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we have an ALR technology specific to that.
So with that being the case, we're seeing a lot of short throw projectors coming in from the floor, but there's also short throw projectors that come in from the ceiling. Is that something that needs to be taken into account when you use those?
Excellent question. We don't recommend our short throw ST material to be used with an above, because usually with the short throw projectors, the relationship between the top of the projector and the bottom of the screen are usually very close. So if you had to do that and you've got your screen in a normal position, which I think we would all agree is about a third of the way up from the bottom. Right. Now that my projector is mounted just above my screen, it's going to look kind of funny visually.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Makes perfect sense.
You have all the lights coming from above as well, hitting the screen at that angle.
Right.
So, yeah.
You've got a lot more reflection coming from those, just the can lights up in the ceiling versus just the projector.
It's going to reflect back that light, which is in turn going to wash out your black levels and lose your contrast, and really defeats the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And what else do you have there, sir?
So one of the things that someone was touching on before, and I'm trying to find where it was, but essentially it talked about the use of ambient light as a positive. So, for instance, you see a lot of people going around and saying, "Hey, you should put a panel of LEDs behind your TV because it'll help your eyes see the difference in color a little bit better, or see a difference in light better." Is that something that some guys maybe do, like a fixed screen, and they'll put like a strip of LED lights around the outer edge, facing back up against the wall? Is that something that's
legitimate?
Worth it? That's legitimate.
We offer it. Most people. I would say a lot of people choose it because of the cool factor, right? I mean, just seeing this glowing screen on your wall looks pretty amazing. Yeah. But there is some science behind it. I mean, that having that soft glow actually relaxes the muscles in your eyes, and it increases your perceived contrast of the image. So there is some science behind it. It does help relax those muscles in your eyes so you don't suffer eye fatigue, especially on some of the larger screens that we're selling these days.
And it will also hide any overwash if you're trying to stretch the screen out. If you're trying to stretch the picture out.
I'll also I'll also add in there JVC displays at CES in Las Vegas. We display at the Venetian in a suite, and SI is kind enough to give us a screen for that.
Nice.
And we got one with the light kit, and we tried it both ways, with the lights on and with the lights off. And I think everyone agreed that in that room, now that we're not talking Batcave, we were talking hotel suite with lighter colored walls and ceiling.
Right.
And the lighting kit, what they technically call bias lighting, we all felt that it did improve the picture just a little bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the science from what Russell was saying, the science behind it is doing. It's relaxing your eyes a little bit better, and even in the lighter wall coloring is probably making it a little bit easier for your eyes to pick up, more of the light coming in. So it's not like it's the old idea of you wake up in the middle of the night to go use the restroom and you turn the bathroom light on and you're blinded. And so it's kind of that idea where if you have the lights come on just a little bit or a really small light off to the side, it's not so harsh when you first turn it on.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Any more questions, young man?
Let's see what we got. So let's see.
I was going to say something. We touched on something earlier about motorized screens.
Okay.
And I did want to just point something out. So one of the advantages of like two-piece projection, what we're talking about today, is we can make that experience disappear just as quickly as it came. You can make that screen roll away, which is great because a lot of people, if they're moving into their house, or a lot more people are spending a lot of time in their homes these days.
No.
So being able to arrange your furniture around the maybe you've got a gorgeous view outside your home of the Rocky Mountains, or being able to arrange your furniture around the view during the day, and then at nighttime, hey, drop down that screen, fire up the JVC projector. You've got a home cinema experience that goes away during the day when you're not using it. So
Now,
That's
how
right.
large can you guys do?
Russell, are you saying you could actually put a screen in front of like a sliding glass door or something?
I think you actually have one of those, Chris, in your theater, right?
Yeah, I did.
I saw that one coming.
Yeah.
and it works very. I'm going to share this just for a second.
Yeah.
Just to show. Let me see if I can do
No,
this right.
Well, while you're pressing that button, how large of a tab tension
this
screen?
is my house.
Oh.
This is my house, and as you can see, during the day I've got a normal living room, but any time that I want, I can set it up so that I have my home theater, and you can see my JVC projector over there on the left. So anyhow, I'm gonna.
In a hush
did
box.
that work?
Yeah.
Well, kind of, yeah. So, and that is an SI slate, and I love it.
How
Chris.
large tab tensioning?
We have a screen
yeah.
that fits in this. So this is you can fit a screen in here.
So
Yeah,
this
and you know
this
what?
piece here.
When I'm explaining it, I hold up my phone.
Yeah.
Because the new SIs, the Solo,
Yep.
on like 100-inch screen, it rolls up. That mechanism, which you just showed, Russell, is literally the height and the depth of an iPhone.
I actually
And
just
that's just amazing when you think about it.
Maybe not
3
the depth,
weeks ago.
It does have a little bit of thickness to it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's a square tube essentially. About 3 weeks ago, me and a coworker of mine actually installed one of the Solo Pro 2s, I believe. It was one of the larger ones that you guys offer with the acoustically transparent, and I do have to say that is probably one of the easiest installations I have ever done. Your system for putting it up there and actually locking it into place, it worked very, very well. It also worked great because we had to take it back down again shortly afterwards because we did something wrong. So we didn't have to worry too much about that. But all that to say, talk about the motorized screens. When you're using a motorized screen, a lot of times the reason is because you want to use like an actual panel television or you want to use the projector. And so Brent, we'll kind of take over on this one. How do we set up the connections between its panel television and a projector?
One of the things we run into a lot here is guys trying to support multiple displays simultaneously. And whenever you add a projector and a flat panel to the same processor, the EDI-D streams are entirely different. And that becomes quite the debacle. And that's where our AIO came from, was the ability to shut off one of the EDI-D streams. The flat panel will deal fine with the projector's EDID. The projector, however, will not deal with the flat panel's EDID at all. So we have to, for all practical purposes, you have to unplug the HDMI to the flat panel.
Actually, that piece right there, well, we just missed it.
Yeah,
that was
because flat panels, when you turn them off, they don't go off.
Right.
They're still throwing EDID and hot plug back to your switcher. Projectors typically, however, do go off.
Right.
Which is actually kind of nice.
And if you think about it, in the HDMI world, the projector is always hooked up to some kind of audio system. So you always have a receiver of some kind or an AVR. And so it knows that it's not the center of all the inputs. And so it knows to release that hot plug connection to renegotiate, because it might have a different source the next time it turns on. So really important stuff. But with that, you just simply, you can either use the AVRs that have the two different outputs on it, or you can use the 1x2 splitters. And then of course using
an AIO.
Yep, using an AIO to make sure the EDID information.
Now, I would like to throw one more kudo at Screen Innovations. They have, without question, the softest t-shirts I have ever gotten.
Some of that in the swag bag.
Those are without the coolest, softest t-shirts I have ever worn.
It's unfortunate that I don't get to play the game, because I came up with some good questions today.
Well, and by the way, I got shafted by Mo at Amsterdam.
Did he steal yours?
Yeah, all I got was a medium, and this ain't fitting in a medium.
Let's see. Oh, Sean's saying that that screen, the Pro 2, that's the one that he's wanting to pair with one of his projectors. Is NX5 a JVC projector?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's wanting to pair it.
NX5.
Yeah. So he's wanting to pair that screen with the NX5. So good luck, man. It's a great screen, I have to say. We definitely recommend our cables with it. You know, use ethereal HDMI cables, and any kind of interconnectivity problems, you can give us a call. And
I can tell you, because Chris uses our cables on the vast majority of his trainings, not all of them, because some places he goes, they're comparing competitors. He is not kind to our cables.
Nope.
They get thrown in his case and hauled around. So we're very happy with the results.
Well, and normally you all, and Chris especially, but Russell and Jason, both of you, we don't know a whole lot except through Chris. But Chris does a lot of traveling normally. Now during this time when everything's going on, you're probably running yourself crazy right now, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
So with that, you're usually constantly moving around, taking the cables with you and trying them in different applications. So if you want to see one of our cables really messed up, Chris is probably the one to have them.
I got plenty, but you know what? They hold up great.
That's
so
good.
I've been very happy.
Are there any more good questions, young man?
Nothing new yet, at this point in time, but of course, if you guys are watching this after the live stream, still leave your questions, still leave your comments in here, because we will get back to you with answers with all of that.
And we will pick a winner for the swag.
Yep, we are going to pick the winner for the swag.
We will get with Chris, Jason, and Russell, go through the questions.
Yep.
And the winner gets a good swag bag, and I'm going to personally beg for a large t-shirt.
One of Screen Innovations t-shirts.
Yes, because they are awesome.
So the other thing that we have going on is we want to continue this conversation. We'd like to go ahead and just put this out there that we would like to get back together, one with JVC and hopefully with Screen Innovations as well. So keep an eye on any kind of social media posts or anything like that where you can see the new date for that. We're looking at the 24th as one option.
There's a lot of information to share with you guys, and we want to expand this, get somebody in from the Home Acoustic Alliance group, and bring more information to the dealers. That's not, okay, we're selling this today, because that's not what this is about.
Right.
This is education. You guys need to understand what you can do in the real world.
And so this episode's kind of been about getting everything designed at the beginning and how to choose the right product to use. On this next episode, what we'd like to do is talk about how to actually calibrate that stuff. So that's why we kind of want to get in some other friends, some other dealers and reps, and we'll go ahead and see about talking about that.
And what's happening this Friday on Metro Tech Tips?
So this Friday on Metro Tech Tips, what is happening this Friday on Metro Tech Tips? I don't know.
You told me earlier.
I did, and I've completely forgotten about it. Check down in the description below. We'll
next
have that,
week
we'll have
is,
that put in
is
there.
dealers.
Yep, next week we're doing a dealer panel.
And the next Friday is
We're doing Fiber Friday.
Fiber Friday again.
Fiber Friday. Oh, this Friday we're doing LEDs. We're going to talk about LEDs
that's an
inside
awesome
inside of a house.
We've got kind of taken up what we're talking about with LEDs earlier with Screen Innovations. John O from our car side is going to be discussing all the things that you can do with LEDs, the RGB, all the capabilities, controlling them. There's a lot to learn on this one.
Right. So before we go ahead and cut this, I'd like to go ahead and open the floor back up to Chris, and to Jason, and to Russell. Do you all have anything to plug, or do you have anything else to add to the conversation?
Any new movies coming out that you want to tell us about your starring roles?
The only thing I want to do, first of all, I want to say thank you. We've gone a full hour and we've had a lot of great participation, and you know, it's cool to be able to get on there. So thanks to the Metro folks, thanks to the SI folks for partnering, and thanks to all the people that are out there watching and checking this out. From a JVC standpoint, we had a awesome firmware update in October for the DILA projectors that added this new frame adapt HDR,
Great.
which could be a complete extra hour in itself. But this is a major upgrade. If you've got customers that have these projectors, double check and make sure they've got that firmware update. Maybe set up a service call if they'll let you come by and do the update, or there's a video on YouTube that I did. If you search JVC firmware, that explains how to do it. But bottom line, it's a fantastic new feature, the frame adapt HDR, and most people will tell you, you know, if you want to play 4K HDR, you want it to look great, and you want it to be plug and play, or as close as you can get, that this firmware update makes that possible. So
And
I just wanted to put out a word on that.
Real quick, Chris, we had one quick question jump in right here at the last second. Alan's asking, is Panasonic still the preferred 4K player for new DILA frame adapt HDR?
Panasonic is a fantastic player. I have one that's been traveling in that same road case. I've got a Panasonic 9000 that has been probably logged more miles than any Blu-ray player I've ever had, and it still performs like a champ. We do have a Panasonic mode in these projectors. That was mostly before frame adapt HDR came out. You can still try it and you can use whichever you like best. But I mean, in my opinion, I still highly recommend Panasonic, but I recommend it because of build quality. I recommend it because of basic performance. And I would match it with the JVC, but I would use the frame adapt picture mode. I would not currently be using the Panasonic color profiles that are in the JVC. You turn off the HDR optimizer in the Panasonic, you just let the JVC do all the heavy lifting there.
Understood. Very cool. Jason, do you have anything to add before we go?
Yeah, so again, thank you to Chris and you guys for hosting us and letting us be a part of this. Shameless plug for we've got lots of different trainings if you're a dealer or even an end user looking to do something for your home or for your clients. Hop on screeninnovations.com/training. You can see a whole list of trainings that include everything from screen to even our shading and new Zigbee 3.0 technologies on our shade side.
Oh,
So
quick question. You guys do have a battery operated screen, motorized screen, don't you?
We do. Yes. Yeah. Battery operated motorized screens.
Which
So
is awesome.
Russell's holding up the charge there. It's like a magnetic induction charger. Just
Oh,
like,
very cool.
Just like an Apple.
yeah, just like an Apple. And a lot of things that you see on that size of that screen, cassette size, everything are carryover from the shade to make some of the smallest shades in the industry. So, yeah, check it out.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say personally, I have a JVC projector at home and the Screen Innovations Black Diamond, which I thoroughly enjoy, at 110 inches at 12 foot of viewing range. Slightly off center.
Mm-hmm. Russell, did you have anything to add before we go ahead and shut this down?
Yeah, no, just expand on what Jason said. You know, check out screeninnovations.com for more information. We've got a list of pretty much everything you can imagine in terms
Very
of
cool.
screen material, different form factors. Yeah, check us out at SI, Screen Innovations.
And don't forget shades.
Yeah, don't forget shades.
Don't forget
Yeah.
shades. That's a great way to make your customer happy.
Yes, it is. So, guys, thank you for checking in with us today. I'm sorry, Russell, did you have something else?
No.
No.
you're
Okay.
good.
Thanks for checking in, everybody. This has been a wonderful episode. I've enjoyed everything we've talked about today. I hope you have as well. Definitely check in with us. We're going to try and get this together again on the 24th of April. Again at 3 p.m. Which the 24th is a Friday.
Friday.
Yeah. So at that point, definitely check in with us on that and check out that video. We look forward to it as well as always. And so with that being said, Brent, go ahead and just one more time say and reintroduce everybody. We'll say goodbye and then we'll go from there.
Top left-hand corner is Chris Deutsch from JVC. Bottom left-hand corner is Jason Russell from Screen Innovations. Bottom right is Russell Warnhoff from Screen Innovations. I'm Brent McCall.
I'm Adam Rogers.
And we're out of here. Thanks.
See you guys later.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Gentlemen, thank you.